doctor.
Cipla will make it better.
She was in the middle of a tabloid storm at the beginning of the year, with one story after the next about alleged drug abuse, catfights, an on-air breakdown followed by supposed suspension from YFM and a stint in rehab, and rumours of a romantic tryst with flamboyant businessman Kenny Kanene. Who am I talking about? None other than DJ and TV personality Dineo Ranaka, and she has a very straightforward answer to explain her behaviour. Or does she? We'll find out in a moment.
Sassy, outspoken, opinionated. Television and radio personality Dineo Ranaka has the gift of the gab and knows how to use it. Hosting her YFM Drive Time show and appearing on numerous TV shows, Dineo's success has always been a talking point. However, in the last year, Dineo's erratic behavior and a series of very public outbursts have overshadowed her accolades. She sought professional help to understand her ranting and raving and discovered that she suffers from temporal lobe epilepsy.
You do know how to create some sort of media storm, Dineo. My word. But now, how do you explain those outbursts? Because I read you had a wonderful explanation.
Well, you know what? First and foremost, I was emotionally drained. I just couldn't anymore. And I think there was some mad chemical imbalance in my system. And it's not a drug chemical imbalance.
Okay, just
no, not
confirming that, all right.
just definitely not substance abuse. I was an exhausted woman, having given birth and going back to work a week after giving birth. Naturally, there's a chemical shift that happens in any woman's body. The emotional burden of being detached from my son a week after giving birth. And then drama at work, the roller coaster, the expectations, being a single parent, having to part with his dad, 2 months after he was born. It is just a roller coaster ride of note. And then ultimately finding out that I have temporal lobe epilepsy that I need to live with, and that's on top of hypothyroidism. So naturally, I am a disaster of a human being. As a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Cape Town happened, I found a moment, and kaboof. Yeah.
Okay, now I can understand the birthing process. I mean, no, I can't understand the birthing process, but I understand the situation, the emotional roller coaster. But to blame some of those outbursts on temporal lobe epilepsy, is that something that's...
Well, I mean, look,
Are you kind of laying blame where blame shouldn't be laid?
No, not at all. I'm not blaming anything on temporal lobe epilepsy. Temporal lobe epilepsy is a new discovery in my life that's just put everything into perspective. It's made a lot of things make sense, because the outburst that was made public is not the only outburst that I've had. There's been a series of outbursts, a series of outbursts with my father, with my younger brother, like very aggressive physical outbursts that I can't even remember. I have to, I literally sit down and they tell me exactly what I would say and what I would do, and I have no recollection of it. I remember what triggers it, but what happens in between, no memory at all, no recollection at all. And I just remember feeling exhausted afterwards and going into a major deep sleep. Wow. And I'm like, okay, well, life happened, and don't know anything of what happened. And then my brother would tell me that, yes, you were smashing bottles against the windscreen. You were like literally almost biting my head off and physically sticking your nails in my flesh, and it was hectic, very
Can you just move a little further away from me?
Just in case, just in case. But yeah, I'm not blaming anything on temporal lobe epilepsy. I mean, clearly, there's a pattern that Dineo has had a disorder. She doesn't know what it is. She hasn't known what it is until February this year, the 15th, when the diagnosis of temporal lobe epilepsy was made. And me living around it and living with the illness and accepting it as an illness in my life, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm shifting blame. I'm just saying that it's justifiable, the person that I was, and now I'm able to manage who I become.
It gives you a clearer picture of why you behave like you do, which is great. So, Etienne, this is why we've brought you. We're not as judge, but as a neurologist, as an expert on temporal lobe epilepsy. As Dineo's explained it, are those accurate descriptions of the condition?
Well, I just met Dineo, and what a pleasant meeting it was, introduction, Michael. I think the important thing is when it comes to temporal lobe epilepsy, one has to understand that it's a complex form of epilepsy. Remember that I think when we think of epilepsy, we think of arms and legs shaking, foam from the mouth, we biting our tongues.
Tonic-clonic, they call it.
That's right. You know it, of course, Michael. And I think that is just a very general way of understanding epilepsy. There are many forms of epilepsy, and one of them actually starts in the temporal lobes. Now, the temporal lobes, I brought a brain here with me, so...
Yes, it's not a real brain, just in case
that's
you
what
want
I look like in my head.
Yeah, don't want to lose my head. But let me just show this. So if you look at the brain, this is the front. So these are what called the frontal lobes, and those little poles there are the temporal lobes. So if you look at the head, that's the temples. So just underneath there, you'll find your temporal lobes. And these temporal lobes are very important lobes in the sense that they work with emotion, memory, and they work with very complex images. Images of almost like dreamlike states, senses and feelings that we don't understand.
I see you nodding wildly,
it
which
really
is
because a few of the symptoms that I had, right, and I still have those even today. When I know that when I know that a seizure is on its way, I'll hallucinate smell. I always smell either a wet dog or some sort of wet animal. And I've had that for years now. My mom would always, she'd find it weird, like, you're weird. There's no wet dogs around. Or I'd smell something burning. And also in the corner of my eye, I thought I'd see ghosts or something of the sort, but I'd see like a dark shadow pass by. And as soon as I look, it's not there. So I live alone, and I'd always be freaked out and stuff. But I'm not freaked out anymore. I understand what's going on.
Yeah. So help us understand that, Etienne, because Dineo's been living with this for years without realizing she had a form of epilepsy. How do you diagnose something like that?
Well, first of all, I think that the first thing is you have to have a very good, clear history. As we always say, you know, the good history, there must be a repetitive features of a process starting with dog going hallucinations and so on. And you have to have a clear picture that then terminates into eventually the seizure.
You pick that up now on an electroencephalogram, an EEG, not so?
That's right. So that's why we do electroencephalogram or EEG. We put these electrodes around the head on all these different places, and then you start to record from the scalp, actually from the skin, you record those minimal changes and tracings that the brain itself makes. And
did you have that, Dineo, by the way? Sorry, I'm interrupting. Did you have an EEG?
Yes, I had an EEG as well as an MRI. The EEG was what they used to diagnose the temporal lobe epilepsy because they found that there were abnormal waves in my frontal lobe and in my temporal lobe, but more abnormal in my temporal lobe than in my frontal lobe.
Yeah, so just tell me a bit about treatment, because we were talking about diagnosis. We talked about EEG, MRI.
Yes, that's right. On the MRI, you can just, while I'm talking about the treatment, there's a typical MRI showing the temporal lobes from the front. So it's a cut through the front, and you'll see two little white signals there, which indicate that the two almost very small hypocampi, those are the areas in the temporal lobe which has been affected. So when it comes to treatment, we've made the diagnosis. It's either going to be clinical if everything else is normal and you still suspect it. If you have an abnormal EEG, very much in the line of what Dineo has indicated, that's very much for temporal lobe epilepsy. And then we look at MRI scan to see if there's any particular reason why that area is abnormal.
So I'm going to ask you to just take a fly hand. Dineo's situation, is this curable or is it manageable? What is she doing? Is she just how are you managing your disease at the moment?
I'm obviously taking my medication. I'm currently on 100 milligram of Epitech, right? And I take that obviously every evening at a certain time between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. And also, I went through extensive therapy, life skills therapy, anger management therapy. So what I do to help myself manage it, I really have, structured my life. I'm still learning my epilepsy, my temporal lobe epilepsy. It's all new to me because I was only diagnosed on the 15th of Feb. But
are there things that Dineo shouldn't be doing? Driving, bathing, just
drinking.
Drinking.
Okay. Very important. Drinking lowers the threshold, so it increases the chances of a seizure afterwards, and the same with lack of sleep. So those are very important aspects. The other thing is driving. If you have a seizure which starts without any warning, one can understand, then refrain from driving for a year, being a year seizure-free on your medication. To take a bath, rather take a shower. It's important. And I always tell the patients, remember to actually turn on your cold water tap first when you shower. We don't do that. But if you have a seizure while it's hot water and you're standing in there and you're waiting for it to become hot, you can have serious burns. We've had a patient who died because of that. And then, of course, swimming is very important. Take somebody with you when you swim.
If I may just add something for anyone who's watching who may be feeling like they have a similar kind of, picking up certain symptoms and auras and stuff that they may have. The seizures are not only emotional, aggressive as well. I'm not sure if doctor would agree with me. I have had for the longest time intellectual fascination, and it would happen at night where I'd have this mad idea and I'd literally script it down, write it down, jot it down, PR strat, marketing strat, everything, you name it, from the get-go to the get-end, you know. And afterwards, I feel so exhausted, and I'd sleep for hours at a time after that. So that's another one of the seizures that I get. And from that, I actually decided to become a creative consultant. Instead of, you know, having these seizures and having them work against me, I decided to have them work for me. And I actually run a successful creative consultancy now because of those.
Because of epilepsy.
Yeah, because of epilepsy. So I'm pretty happy about it.
Dineo,
I actually think it's a blessing more than a curse.
You couldn't have said it better. I think God-given. So congratulations. Now, thanks for your time, Etienne. Thank you for your insight. Really appreciate that. You wanted to say one more thing?
Yes, I had to say one thing just on this point. Thank you very much, Michael. And then I think the important thing is that because it's such a complex condition, that many of these symptoms that we're describing, what we've been talking about, could be very normal symptoms, not necessarily linked to epilepsy as well. So really discuss these things with a specialist who knows how to actually decipher all these features.
Yeah, the next time you get out of your car and take a bottle and smash it on someone's windscreen, don't blame it on temporal lobe epilepsy.
Don't blame it on temporal lobe epilepsy.
Cipla will make it better.